Unblocked Live is on the air. It's Jeremy Lee Quinn, and Twitter is a bit of a mess these days. I jumped on recently. I'd taken a couple of days off, and to my surprise, there's quite a few stories that have accelerated in an interesting way. And I'll go through my Twitter feed. We're going to cover everything from going back to the Capitol, the two individuals that I came into contact with. The Twitter sleuths have been on their trail ever since January the 6th. So I found a couple of interesting updates, including that both these individuals are from the California scene. One of them, the guy with the big long beard, who in the live stream walked up to me and said, "You want the story of your life?" That guy apparently was part of the Trump crowd. It's interesting because so many people on Twitter were trying to say that that guy is Antifa because he had this big long beard and he had kind of skinny jeans on and stuff. But apparently he's been very active in the Beverly Hills scene and was featured in a video that I had seen months ago at a shopping mall in the Los Angeles area, where he, as an anti-masker, is showing up to businesses and challenging them. So that I found on Twitter, published from a activist account in the LA area, somebody I'd seen at Hollywood protests. Everything's just coming together in this bizarre way. Add to that I find out that an influencer back on January the 13th, one of these people who has like 100, 200,000 followers, was the first to tweet out the supercut of my video. And so that, if you're not familiar, what happened was my video from the Capitol was cut together in rapid succession to make it look, in my opinion, a little bit more competent than it actually was. But the guy with a long beard who comes out and says, like, "Who's with me?" is in that video. It got millions of views, but it all starts when you have it's retweeted tens of thousands of times. And that can only happen when an influencer steps in. Somebody who, for some reason, has 100 or 200,000 followers. So I was able to identify who that person was. You can trace directly the pirated clip to that person, to TMZ, to CNN, etc. So the succession of video theft is fascinating when you look back at it. There are a couple of other things that I picked up on that I thought were very interesting when you sort of look back. First of all, a lot of these outlets were seizing on any story that they could in that, what was it, the second week of January, right? So if there's a reckoning to be had, it's going to be looking back at all of the salacious stories that came out. Were they true? One that I found particularly interesting was the story of a woman who supposedly was going to sell her Nancy Pelosi's laptops to the Russians. Now, you hear a story like that, and I don't know what your bullshit meter is like, but my bullshit meter goes off and just says, wait, what? Someone's going to stole Nancy Pelosi's laptop to sell it to the Russians? It'd be interesting to look back at that story. I started, and one interesting tidbit is that it was the woman's ex that, reported this. So you got to ask yourself, all right, how reliable is the testimony of an ex? Immediately, that puts it into contention. Now, in saying that, I'm going to go the opposite way, really, with another story that's come out of Northern California that's very interesting. Do you guys remember the bloody pig's head that the activists in Northern California put on the wrong doorstep? Not that there's a right doorstep to put a bloody pig's head. We shouldn't be putting bloody pig's heads on anybody's doorsteps, in my opinion. But there was this story that came out in which a bloody pig's head was put on a doorstep to an expert witness during the Chauvin trial. And this was a use of force expert who used to work in the police department in Sonoma. For those of you who don't know where that is, that's Northern California. Well, Antifa-aligned activists put a bloody pig's head and smeared, I don't know if it's real blood or if it's fake blood. That's a missing detail that we sure could use. Is it fake blood? Are we talking corn syrup? What's going on here? but they spattered in what looked like either paint or fake blood both a monument that's in downtown Sonoma of a hand. They spattered it red. And then they also spattered the doorstep along with leaving the pig's head of what was the former house of this, fellow who worked for the police and testified on use of force in the Chauvin trial. So imagine you get up one day in your new home that I don't know how new it was, but it's, recently purchased home, and you go out to the front and there's a pig's head and there's blood splattered everywhere. What's interesting is a ABC News reporter, a guy who I've seen in Sacramento more than once. He's an they call it the ABC I team or something. So he's doing kind of what we call the VJ thing. He's a video journalist. He's a reporter, but he's also someone who shoots and edits probably his own work. This reporter for ABC in San Francisco, his name is Dan Noyes, and it's really interesting because what's happened is there's been a Twitter mob going after him, sort of telling him that he's been duped by a right-winger. Now, he did something very unusual in the press in the sense that he ran with a piece about that group that left the pig's head and that did the graffiti on the hand and so forth. And it was the Sonoma Radical group. And there were these encrypted chats on a site. I can't remember what it's called, but it's a site like Telegram or one of these third-party encrypted sites. So this is what I think happened. This guy who infiltrated the group, maybe he pitched the story, I'm not sure, but somehow it gets to this reporter, Dan, for ABC in the Bay Area. He runs with the story. It's a long segment, and from what I can tell, it's a legitimate segment. But his source is an admitted Trump supporter. So I understand activists' questioning of it. It's one thing to question it and say, okay, this guy's a Trump supporter, so how can he not be biased against Antifa groups? But does that have any relevance to the story itself? Now, if you compare it to the Pelosi laptop story, where the X is saying that the woman was going to sell the laptop to Russia, yes, you can be suspect of the source, that it's an X, just like you can be suspect of the Trump supporter who is going up against the Antifa group, who left the pig's head on the wrong door, by the way. You can be suspect of sources. That's fine. So what it comes down to is a parsing of the evidence. Now, what's happening right now online with Dan Noyes' profile is he's essentially it's a great gaslighting, where they're telling him, they're just making free associations, you got duped. And the first person to come on, well, there's two, a profile called Chad Loader, who I have no idea who Chad Loader is, but he's already preemptively blocked me, possibly because I have been in the Antifa Sacramento group and documented them. And so possibly whoever this Chad Loader is, you look him up and it seems to be a profile of some sort of Silicon Valley wokist. I'm not quite sure what his deal is, but he's blocked me before I could even go and enter the conversation. So that's interesting. Now, a lot of interesting players all of a sudden are in this mob. One of them is the San Diego Antifa account. Now, the San Diego Antifa account is interesting because they're one of the few Antifa groups that has somewhat there's things they do that I think are unreasonable. They, call for exposing elected officials' homes, for example. That's what they're doing right now in regards to Oceanside. Too far, in my opinion. Now, this all connects together in this like crazy Charlie Day meme way. When you connect all the different strands of activism, it's quite interesting. But the San Diego Antifa group I've had somewhat of communication with. I've been at San Diego Actions and I've documented them. The thing is, they came out against the Bay Area, questioning the Bay Area reporter. Now, I think it's okay to question a source, but what these activist pylons aren't doing is they're not dealing with the actual material. Where in the material is there any indication that it's false? And then you start to sound like a conspiracy theorist if you're like, oh, well, the tape is fake. In the tape, you know what I should do is I should just play the segment, and then we could talk about that. We could talk about, again, going back to the Capitol, the folks that were featured in my videos, how Twitter is trying to sleuth who they are. We can also talk about how my video was stolen. And then the last subject that I want to bring up, including your questions, because I can see that people have some questions and stuff, and I'd be interested to talk a little more. The other topic is down in Oceanside, where this San Diego scene is. They've installed on like a roadway where there used to be houseless encampments. Those who were houseless were pitching tents. They've put like jagged rocks and installed them along the entire way so people can't pitch their tents there. Essentially, they're treating people like pigeons, putting up jagged rocks so you can't put your tent there. Now, I have a couple opinions about that. I think not only are the optics bad, but it's just such a poor use of public funds to make a space impassable just because you think homeless people are going to camp there. It does nothing to address the problems. It'll be interesting to see if there are what the real situation is. The city of Oceanside says they are housing and they are working with those who are homeless. And so it'll be interesting to break that down and go a little deeper in that story. But right offhand, you have probably what is one of the dumbest visuals that if you're a city, you can provide for both the press and activists, which is a sidewalk, which looks like a spiked Flintstones, it's terrible. It's jarring. I'll say that much. So in a weird sort of confluence of events, I'm actually questioning the city of Oceanside and why they aren't using networking with the state. For example, if this is a destination, if you're a municipality and people who have no homes are coming to one specific destination, instead of making pigeon spikes in a sidewalk, why not designate that area in a truly progressive manner as an intake spot? Why not coordinate with state researchers? If you think, those without homes are going to show up en masse, why not use that space for something other than just pigeon spikes? That is my thought. There's a lot more, on every story to dig into and find out. Maybe the city of Oceanside has more to say about it. I want to find out. As always, thanks for tuning in to Unblocked Live. I also want to announce tomorrow we have a special opportunity to talk to an old friend of mine and colleague, which is a fellow named Shannon Lanier, who's a descendant of Thomas Jefferson. We're going to talk about the Jeffersonian legacy. I've been teasing that podcast for a while. Somebody is weighing in right here against SD, against FASH. I know that's exactly the organization. The one thing that they do, which I absolutely do not agree with, is they try to essentially put pressure on elected officials by even trying to expose their where they live. They made a comment, SD against the FASH also made a comment against Dan Noyes. I've actually asked to interview this group several times, but of course they won't. They made a comment saying we should put these flyers up in your neighborhood about the reporter Dan Noyes who's reporting in ABC. Now, the flyer was a completely bullshit flyer, in which with a picture of the reporter's face saying, "This man provides a hit list to NorCal Proud Boys." Nonsense. Now, could it be that his source for the story was Proud Boy adjacent or even a Proud Boy? It's possible. But again, that does not discredit his story, nor does it entail that he is some sort of collaborator. It just means that he took the evidence from a source that yes, it's not an approved source. And so a lot of that report is based on the veteran reporting and track record of Mr. Noyes and what he has put together. Could it blow up in his face? Well, the only way it would is if he didn't really verify, the tape and the content that was given to him. But there's no indication that that was the case. There's no indication that anything is manufactured in the report. And I'm going to look it up and play it so we can I'll take a look at it. I think that would be an interesting thing to do, is look at this ABC report and then go from there. And let me see if I can just find it really quick. ABC. And we can kind of break it down. I think it's a really interesting story. It's called Exclusive. And it even says in the headline, Trump supporter shares what he uncovered after infiltrating anti-fascist group in California. So, again, he's taking a huge risk. Now, remember when I did I wrote a piece about my experiences shadowing and blending in with different Antifa groups, and the New York Times covered it. We were we, meaning myself and the New York Times reporter, were both heavily sort of attacked in the same type of Twitter pile-on that Dan Noyes has faced. So this is familiar territory to me. And SD Against the Fash was one of the groups. Another person who actually led the charge, believe it or not, was another reporter, a guy from Vice named Donovan Farley. Now, Donovan Farley is an interesting sort of figure in this whole story because he's the one who had interviewed Michael Reinl for Vice, in which Michael Reinl had just shot and killed Jay Danielson up in Northern California. And what happens? He goes to Vice, and from what I have seen, what I should do is break down that interview, the Michael Reinl interview from Vice, because I've watched it, and it doesn't sound like Michael Reinl's being peppered with tough questions. It's interesting to know that this Donovan Farley is definitely an activist journalist as opposed to an, shall I say, actual journalist. And Donovan Farley is the first to say something to Dan Noyes, and it's quite comical what he says. Actually, I have a screenshot here, and I'll read it because the pomposity of it is pretty impressive. Now, another person leading the attack on the Bay Area Reporter is a guy named Chad Loader. I said, I don't even know who the heck that is, but he blocked me preemptively. But this is some good content here, reading Mr. Donovan Farley's tweet. Now, Donovan Farley refers to himself as a journalist / tear gas sommelier. That's so witty. Covering extremism, police, and the arts. I guess that's kind of like me. I cover extremism, police, and the arts. Donovan Farley, tear gas sommelier and journalist. Playboy, Vice, Spin, Rolling Stone, Paste, Consequence. Sorry, I gotta make fun of people who put brand names on their profile. Donovan Farley, I mean, this is hilarious. W Week, I wonder if that means Willamette Week. That would mean Pacific Northwest. Yep, Portland, Oregon. So this guy is straight up activist, like pure activist journalism. So this is what he has to say about Dan Noyes' report. He writes, this is Donovan Farley to Dan Noyes. Wow. I'm going to give it a dramatic reading. I'm feeling a little, I'm feeling it today, guys. I'm feeling it. So Donovan Farley says to Dan Noyes, wow, you got played here, friendo. Utterly used. Leave this sort of coverage to journalists who have been putting our safety on the line for years to do so, and who actually know what we're doing. I'm Donovan Farley, and I approve this message. So it gets 300 and something likes. It gets quote tweets, it gets retweets. Not a lot, really, comparatively, but it's important to know who Donovan Farley is connected to. He's an activist journalist, so he has activists who actually follow him. I have activists who follow me, but I'm not a ideologue, so I'm actually going to piss them off just as much as I piss off everybody else. So by reporting the truth. So this activist reporter, Donovan Farley, starts this. They start coming after Dan Noyes about his report on the Sonoma-based Antifa group. And I'm going to play that for you in a second. We'll just watch the whole thing. I just have to look over at the chat because I know I'll have a chance to catch up on what's being written. I see that there's somebody here, and I don't want to ignore you. I'm assuming it's in regards. It looks like it's in regards to the San Diego aligned group, which I have a little experience with. But I'm willing to break that down too. And again, I have invited them to come and talk to me several times. But these groups do not talk to the press. And you're going to see that emphasized at the end of the ABC report, that it's almost like being in a cult. If you're in a cult, one of the rules of the cult is you don't talk to the press. Cult rule, don't talk to the press. Cult rule 2, don't talk to the police. It's like a cult. Don't talk to the police. Don't talk to the press. Those are cult rules. Sorry, I'm being extra loose today and telling you guys what I feel. For a change, I feel like after a year now, I could stop being so careful. I have been careful, and so let's get to it. Let's share the screen a little, take a look at what's going on, and let's watch this ABC report because. It's an interesting one, and hopefully I don't buffer out on this. Let's give it a shot.
Defending the actions of Derek Chauvin.
Derek Chauvin was justified.
4 days later, masked figures in black threw a severed pig's head and pig's blood at the house where Broad used to live in West Santa Rosa.
I know that the victims in this case feel threatened and they don't feel safe in their home.
Broad hasn't lived there for more than a year. A short time later, police suspect the same group covered the hand statue in a nearby shopping plaza with blood, posting a sign, oink, oink. The I-Team is getting possible new insight into that attack and other recent acts of vandalism from a Sonoma County business owner and Trump supporter who infiltrated a group of anti-fascist activists.
I saw that they were here. I read their manifesto, and I could tell that they were a threat to the community, and somebody needed to do something about this.
The manifesto posted online for SoCo, Sonoma County, Radical Action, or SRA, says, do not hesitate, do not wait. The brick in the street is meant to be thrown. The paint in the can is meant to be sprayed. The cop in your head is meant to be killed. The Trump supporter was able to join the group that communicates through the encrypted messaging app